All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into something pretty wild.
Yeah.
I mean, a real head-scratcher.
Yeah.
We're talking about Khalil Meek, this guy who went from,
Right.
hardcore Christian to fully embracing Islam. It's
Wow.
it's a real trip. We've got this interview where he breaks down his whole experience,
Okay.
and it really makes you think about how we form our beliefs,
What's fascinating to me is that it wasn't like a sudden,
Yeah.
overnight thing. It was like this gradual shift, He was really searching for truth, and that search took him down a path that I don't think anyone would have predicted.
No, for sure. And you know what's crazy? Khalil's early life was like Christianity Central. I mean, we're talking church every Sunday, Bible school,
Wow.
the whole shebang.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important to understand, right? Because
Right.
it shows just how ingrained his initial beliefs were.
Right.
This wasn't just some casual thing. It was like his whole foundation.
Absolutely. And then he tells this story about a church presentation when he was just a kid, like 6 or 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
And they show this super graphic video about hell.
Oh, God.
Talk about nightmare fuel.
Yeah, I remember him talking about that.
Yeah.
He mentions it a few times in the interview.
Yeah.
And, those kinds of images, especially at a young age, they can really stick with you.
Totally.
It can shape how you see the world.
Yeah.
And for Khalil, it really cemented his belief in Christianity.
Wow.
He even felt this urge to, save his friends from eternal damnation.
It's like he's got the truth.
Yeah.
And everyone else needs to get on board.
Right.
But here's the thing, right? As he gets older, that intensity kind of fades. College, life gets in the way, distractions.
It makes sense.
He kind of puts his faith on the back burner.
Yeah, it's a pretty common experience, right? Especially at that age, to
Texas.
start questioning things, exploring different ideas. And sometimes faith takes a backseat.
Right. And that's exactly what happened with Khalil.
Hmm.
In his final year of college, he starts feeling this emptiness.
Yeah, wow.
Like something's missing.
Yeah.
And guess what? Those old Christian beliefs
They come back.
knocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like those early experiences have this power.
Yeah.
They shape our values even when we think we've moved on.
He even considered becoming a Baptist minister. Can you imagine?
It makes sense, though, right? Given his background and
Yeah.
that renewed desire to connect with his faith.
It's like a full circle moment.
Mm-hmm.
But here's where things take a turn.
Okay.
Khalil's all fired up, ready to share his faith. And he starts getting into these religious debates with anyone who will listen. He's on a mission to save souls,
That proactive approach is so important because it
Yeah.
leads him to this encounter
Yeah,
that really shakes things up for him.
exactly. So he meets this Muslim friend.
Yeah.
And at first, Khalil sees these conversations as opportunities to, convert his friend.
Right.
He's going in with good intentions, or so he thinks.
Mm-hmm.
But his friend doesn't really argue. Instead, he calmly answers Khalil's questions.
Interesting.
Even gives him these pamphlets written by this Islamic scholar, Ahmed Deedat.
D-Dot, yeah. His work focuses on comparing religions,
Right.
and he's known for his critiques of the Bible. So this introduction to D-Dot's perspective becomes a turning point.
For sure. Especially this one pamphlet called
Okay.
Is the Bible God's Word? I mean, come on, that title alone is
Right?
pretty provocative, right?
Yeah, it challenges this
Yeah,
fundamental assumption that Khalil's always had.
exactly. And Deedat brings up these points about
Okay.
the lack of original manuscripts in the original languages.
Right.
And all these inconsistencies between different versions of the Bible.
So for the first time, Khalil is forced to think about the historical context of his faith.
He's always taken the Bible's authenticity for granted. But now he's facing some tough questions.
Right. Like, how can we be sure we're getting the real deal?
Exactly. If all we have are copies of copies, translated and reinterpreted over centuries, I mean...
It's a valid question.
Right.
And it's one that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah. And to make things even more confusing,
Okay.
he's also learning about the Quran during this time.
Right.
And from a historical perspective, it seems much more confessed.
Yeah, the Quran has this meticulous preservation in its original Arabic from the very beginning. Muslims consider it the direct word of God revealed to Prophet Muhammad.
So for Khalil, who's already doubting the Bible,
Right.
the Quran's history and its claim of divine origin are super compelling.
It's like he's seeing these two faiths side by side.
Yeah.
And the contrast is just hitting him.
Hard, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not just the history. He's also noticing
What else?
all these similarities between Islam and Christianity.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like the stories of prophets like Jesus and Moses.
Right. Figures who were revered in both faiths.
Yeah, exactly.
Those shared narratives must have been striking.
Totally. And then there's this other pamphlet by Didat, Muhammad in the Bible. This one blew my mind.
What was it about?
It points out all these passages that Muslims interpret as prophecies about the coming of Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah, the idea of prophecies linking the two faiths.
Right.
It's a key argument for many converts to Islam.
Yeah, they see these passages as foreshadowing Muhammad's arrival.
Exactly.
Validating his role as a prophet in the Abrahamic tradition.
And for Khalil, it's like puzzle pieces falling into place.
It's amazing how sometimes the things that challenge our beliefs the most can lead us to a deeper understanding.
Yeah, it's about pushing past the discomfort.
Totally.
Seeing where the evidence leads.
It's funny, at first he thought his Muslim friend was just a confused Christian.
Yeah.
But now he's the one who's starting to feel confused.
That's the beauty of real dialogue, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not about winning or losing. It's about challenging your own assumptions.
Right.
And being open to the possibility that you might be wrong.
Totally. But there was this one major sticking point for Khalil.
Okay.
This core difference between the two faiths that he just couldn't get past.
Yeah.
The concept of salvation.
This
is where things get really theological, you know?
Yeah, this is a huge difference between Christianity and Islam.
Right. In Christianity, it's all about Jesus' divinity.
Right.
And his sacrifice is the only way to salvation.
The idea is you can't earn your way into heaven. You're saved through God's grace.
Right.
By accepting Jesus.
Whereas Islam emphasizes the oneness of God.
Yes, Tawheed.
Right, Tawheed.
Yeah.
And the belief that salvation comes through faith and good deeds.
So it's less about a one-time acceptance.
Yeah.
And more about striving to live a righteous life.
Yeah, in accordance with God's will.
Exactly.
Right.
And this difference becomes a real struggle for Khalil.
Right.
As he tries to make sense of these two frameworks.
I can only imagine how tough that must have been for him.
Yeah, especially with how deeply he believed in Jesus's divinity.
He talks about how he really started scrutinizing the Bible.
Okay.
Looking for answers. And he found passages where Jesus himself emphasizes the supremacy of God.
Wow.
He even started questioning if Jesus ever claimed to be God.
That's a huge shift.
Right.
For someone raised to believe in Jesus's divinity.
Totally. These internal contradictions must have been so unsettling for him.
It's like the ground is shifting beneath you.
Right.
But it's in those moments of uncertainty that we often see the most growth. We're forced to confront our deepest beliefs. And sometimes that leads to unexpected breakthroughs.
And for Khalil, it leads to a life-changing decision.
What's that?
He decides to convert to Islam.
Wow. This is a pivotal moment in his story.
Yeah.
Months of questioning, wrestling with doubt.
Right.
And ultimately following his heart.
And get this, he does it all on his own. Doesn't tell his girlfriend, who later becomes his wife.
Wow.
Doesn't tell his family. No one. He goes to a mosque in Denton, where he was going to school, and recites the Shahada.
The Islamic Declaration of Faith, the cornerstone of Islam.
Right, declaring belief in the oneness of God and the prophethood of Muhammad.
It's a simple statement, but it carries so much weight.
He describes it as this incredibly powerful experience, like this huge burden being lifted. He talks about this sense of peace and connection like he'd never felt before.
This is a common thread in conversion narratives, right? This feeling of finding a missing piece, a sense of belonging.
It's not just an intellectual shift.
No.
It's a deeply personal and emotional transformation.
And I think that's what makes his story so compelling. It's not just about facts and arguments. It's about this very human search for meaning and belonging.
Exactly. And it reminds us that sometimes the most profound truths are the ones that resonate deep within us.
Right, the ones that touch our hearts and souls.
Yeah, not just our minds. So here he is, a new Muslim, and he's got this whole new set of beliefs and practices to figure out.
Right.
But life goes on, right?
Oh, yeah, it's just the beginning of a new chapter.
Exactly. And now he's got to navigate this new identity, reconcile his past with his present, and share this huge change with people he cares about.
Which is never easy.
No, not at all.
Especially when it involves a faith that's often misunderstood.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
I can't wait to hear more.
Yeah.
So before we dive into the whole, fallout from his conversion, I want to go back to something he said about that moment when he actually converted.
Okay.
When he recited the Shahada, he talked about this, really profound experience, this feeling of peace and connection he'd never felt before.
Right, like a huge weight lifted off his shoulders.
Exactly. And it's something you see a lot in conversion stories. This idea that it's not just a, change of belief,
right,
but a deeply personal and emotional transformation.
Yeah, this feeling of connecting with something bigger than yourself.
Right, like a barrier being removed.
Yeah, it's like a universal human longing or something.
I think so. But then, of course, reality sets in.
Oh, yeah.
He's got this whole new set of beliefs and practices to figure out.
Right, and some of them are pretty different from what he was used to.
Exactly. Embracing Islam isn't just about saying the Shahada. It's about integrating these principles into your whole life.
Right, like avoiding interest, not eating pork.
Yeah, even things like men not wearing gold.
I remember him talking about that whole wedding ring thing.
Oh, yeah.
His fiancée, who wasn't Muslim at the time, was not happy about having to swap out her gold ring.
It's kind of funny, but it also highlights those real adjustments that come with interfaith relationships.
Totally.
Yeah.
Especially when one partner converts to a faith with such distinct practices.
It shows how patient he had to be. Yeah.
Not just with himself, but with the people closest to him.
Imagine trying to explain to your fiancé that you can't wear your gold ring anymore because of your new religion.
It's a testament to his commitment, though.
Yeah.
And his willingness to navigate those challenges sensitively.
And speaking of his wife, her journey is a whole other story.
It is, right.
I mean, to go from rejecting his conversion to embracing Islam herself.
That's a huge shift.
It makes you wonder what changed for her.
Yeah, was it just see how committed he was? Or did she start exploring Islam on her own?
He did mention that she started interacting with the Muslim community.
Right, getting to know people who actually practice the faith.
Yeah, maybe that helped break down some of her misconceptions.
I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Our perceptions of a faith are often shaped by stereotypes.
Right.
But when you actually engage with people who practice that faith, it can really challenge your assumptions.
It reminds me of those interfaith dialogues that are becoming more popular. Yeah, where people from different religions come together.
Right, not to debate or convert each other.
But to just listen and learn.
Exactly, to build bridges of understanding.
Those kinds of initiatives are so crucial in today's world.
But let's be real. Not every interfaith relationship ends with both partners converting.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question. It really depends on the individuals involved.
Sure.
For some couples, sharing the same faith is essential. For others, it's about respecting each other's differences.
So it's not about conforming to the same beliefs.
Right.
But about creating a space where both partners feel supported.
Exactly. And that takes open communication.
Yeah.
A willingness to learn and a commitment to working through those differences.
It's not always easy.
No, definitely not.
But Khalil and his wife's story shows that it's possible.
It highlights the power of love, patience, and growth.
And it's not just about how faith impacts relationships.
Right.
It's about how it shapes our worldview, how we see the world's problems.
Which brings us to another interesting part of his story.
Okay.
His admiration for Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too.
Especially given his Christian background.
Right. What do you think drew him to Prophet Muhammad?
Well, Khalil talks about how Prophet Muhammad was able to address these contemporary challenges through his teachings. He was impressed by how relevant those teachings were.
Right, even centuries later.
Exactly. Offering guidance on issues like social justice, family dynamics, personal ethics.
So even though their religious backgrounds were different,
Yeah.
Khalil found something in Prophet Muhammad's teachings that resonated with him.
I think it speaks to the universality of certain principles.
Right, like justice, compassion, the pursuit of knowledge.
Exactly, values that transcend religious boundaries.
It's like he's saying, don't let labels limit your understanding.
Right.
Look deeper, you might be surprised.
And that open-mindedness is what led him to his conversion.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid to ask tough questions, to confront uncomfortable truths.
And to ultimately follow his heart.
But it's important to remember that these journeys aren't always easy.
Oh yeah, conversion comes with its own set of challenges.
There can be doubt, fear, backlash from loved ones.
And the struggle to adapt to a new way of life.
You're right. It takes courage to embrace such a fundamental change.
But Khalil's story also shows the resilience of the human spirit.
Yeah, our ability to adapt, to grow, to find meaning, even in the face of adversity.
And his message to those considering Islam was so encouraging.
What did he say?
He said, focus on your connection with God. Don't let fear hold you back.
Those are powerful words.
They really are. And they apply to so much more than just religious conversion.
It's about living authentically.
Yeah.
Following your heart.
Trusting that you're supported, even when you step into the unknown.
It's a reminder that we're all on a journey.
And that the path to truth and meaning is rarely straightforward.
But with courage, open-mindedness,
and a willingness to embrace change,
we can all discover something extraordinary.
Khalil even compared Prophet Muhammad to the concept of superheroes.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
He said that Prophet Muhammad's ability to transform society made him a more compelling figure than any fictional hero.
What specifically did he admire about Prophet Muhammad?
He highlighted his courage, his commitment to justice, his ability to unite people around a common purpose.
So he saw those qualities combined with his spiritual insights as making him a true role model.
Exactly. A real-life superhero.
It's a bold statement for sure.
It is. But I think it speaks to Khalil's deep respect for Prophet Muhammad.
And his belief in the power of faith to inspire positive change.
It also challenges us to look beyond superficial representations.
To engage with history in a more nuanced way.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
It's not just about one man's conversion. It's about exploring the nature of belief.
The search for truth.
And the transformative potential of open-mindedness.
So how can we apply Khalil's story to our own lives?
Right, even if we're not considering converting to another religion.
I think it goes back to that question he asked at the end.
Which one?
He said, if a devout Christian like me could find his path to Islam through careful examination and open-mindedness, what does that say about the power of genuine seeking?
It really makes you think, right? Like, what if we're all just a little bit off?
I think that's the point. He's challenging us to really examine what we believe.
Yeah, and to be open to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, we don't have it all figured out.
It's so easy to get stuck in our own echo chambers, you know?
Surrounded by people who agree with us all the time.
But real growth, I think, comes from those moments when our beliefs are challenged.
Right, when we have to wrestle with ideas that make us uncomfortable.
And it's not just about thinking either.